Hello, you are listening to The Place We Find Ourselves podcast. I'm Adam Young, and I am going to just dive right in. Here's the opening premise of today's episode. Trauma impairs integrative functioning in the brain. Neuroscience has demonstrated that what happens in your developing brain when you're a kid and you experience trauma or abuse is that your brain's natural process of integrating gets blocked. Now, what does that mean? It means that when you experience trauma or abuse, the neurons in certain regions of your brain are prevented from linking up with and connecting well enough with the neurons in other regions of your brain. Integration refers to the connection between neurons in different parts of your brain. Trauma impairs integration in the brain. It blocks it. In other words, when you experience trauma, the various regions of your brain do not make enough neural connections with one another. More specifically, your medial prefrontal cortex and your orbital prefrontal cortex do not develop thick neuronal connections with your limbic system. Why is integration important? What's the big deal with neurons in one part of your brain linking up with neurons in another part of your brain? Integration is such a big deal because when neurons are well connected, your brain is more stable. And when you hear the word stable, I hope you are thinking about affect regulation. If affect regulation is a relatively new concept to you, I invite you to listen to podcast episode 20, titled Affect Regulation, Why It's Critical for Everyday Life. You know what it's like when you get unstable emotionally. You know what it feels like when your affect gets dysregulated. It happens to varying degrees every day for most of us. Affect dysregulation happens when your brain is not well integrated. Dysregulation happens because the neurons in certain regions of your brain are not well connected to the neurons in other regions of your brain. The brain is what's called a complex system. And complexity theory teaches us something very important about complex systems. And it's this: complex systems are most stable when their component parts are A, differentiated, and then B, linked. Complexity theory maintains that a complex system, like your brain, is more stable when the various components of that system differentiate from one another and then link up with one another. And that's what integration is. Integration means that the various regions of your brain have differentiated from one another and have become deeply connected with one another. Both. You need both for integration, wholeness, healing. Complexity theory teaches us that stability is a function of differentiation and linkage. So, the more differentiation and linkage you have in your brain, the more emotionally stable your brain will be. The brain is the complex system par excellence. I mean, your brain is a mass of neurons, probably about 100 billion of them. And if you were to look at just one of those neurons, you would see that it is connected to between 1,000 and 10,000 other neurons, which is absolutely staggering. So here's the point. There are billions and billions of connections between neurons in your brain. When you feel unstable, when you are dysregulated, this is because the neurons in certain parts of your brain are not sufficiently connected with the neurons in other parts of your brain. Here's the good news. There is something you can do to promote integration in your brain. You are not bound by your brain's present level of integration. And what I want to talk about today is a practice that you can do to promote integration in your brain. And integration is another way of saying healing. When the brain heals, it becomes more integrated. When the brain becomes more integrated, it heals. And by the way, the biblical term for this webbing together of things, this deep connection between differentiated parts, is the Hebrew word shalom. Shalom refers to the webbing together of differentiated parts in a way that brings stability, harmony, peace. This is affect regulation. I am deeply indebted to the work of Dan Siegel for today's episode. In fact, if you want to dive into the science behind today's episode, if you want more about what I'm talking about, you can read Siegel's excellent book entitled Aware. Much of what I'm about to explain comes from this book. In the book Aware, Dan Siegel shares a mindfulness practice that he developed called the Wheel of Awareness. He designed the Wheel of Awareness practice to help people promote integration in their brain. Now, before I go further, what does the word mindfulness mean? When I talk about mindfulness practices, what do I mean? Mindfulness simply refers to paying attention on purpose to the present moment and doing this without judgment. Let's break down those parts. Paying attention on purpose to the present moment and without judgment. Those are the requirements for a mindfulness practice. If I asked you to take the next 5 minutes and purposefully pay attention to your breathing, you would be doing a mindfulness practice. You would be first paying attention on purpose. Instead of letting your mind wander to what you need to do later today, or letting your mind wander to a hard conversation you had this morning, you would be purposefully paying attention to your breathing. You would be intentionally noticing your in-breath and your out-breath. Second, you would also be paying attention to what's happening in the present moment. You're paying attention to what's happening right now. You're breathing right now in the present moment. So those are the first two attributes of mindfulness practice. Paying attention on purpose to what's happening in the present moment. And the third attribute of mindfulness practice is to do all of this without judgment. Without judgment. Why does the without judgment part matter? Because here's what's going to happen if you try to pay attention to your breath for 5 minutes. Within a minute or two, your mind is going to wander. In other words, your attention is going to be pulled away from noticing your breath, and you will find yourself thinking about something else. When that happens, when you realize that you are no longer paying attention to your breathing, will you simply return your attention to your breath without condemning yourself for losing focus on the breath? There must be a posture of kindness, a posture of non-judgment when you realize that you have wandered from the intended focus of attention. That's the third attribute of mindfulness practices, non-judgment. Now, in a moment, I'm going to take you through a mindfulness practice that Siegel developed called the Wheel of Awareness. But before I explain the wheel, I need to say a few things about why practices matter. Why do we need to do practices? Why can't I just listen to the podcast, accrue the knowledge, and go on with my life? Why do I need to do practices? Practices matter because practices change the linkages between neurons in your brain. Practices, mindfulness practices, like the Wheel of Awareness, change the linkages between neurons in your brain. How can a practice change the linkage between neurons in my brain? Because the way a neural network is developed and the way it is strengthened is through repeated experience, and practice is self-directed experience. When you practice something, you are putting your brain through an experience. Remember, repeated experience is how and why your brain has developed the way it has. Repeated experience. With the exceptions of the genes that were passed down to you, the development of the neural architecture of your brain is completely a function of the experiences you have had in life. And one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways that the connection between two neurons gets stronger is by experiencing the same thing repeatedly. When you're a 5-year-old girl and you have repeated experiences of being heard and seen and validated and cared about, those experiences create very strong linkages between certain neural circuits in your brain. And the strong connections between these neural circuits make it very easy for that 5-year-old girl, when she grows up into adulthood, to regulate her affect. Her brain is more stable because it is more integrated. Mindfulness practices, like the Wheel of Awareness, which I'm about to explain, are merely self-directed experiences. Mindfulness practices change your brain because, as Dan Siegel puts it, what is practiced repeatedly strengthens brain firing patterns. With repetition, neural structure is literally altered. That's Dan Siegel. When you do a mindfulness practice, you are putting your brain in a particular state. And when you do that over and over each day, a state becomes a trait. In other words, your brain changes. Research has shown that certain mindfulness practices alter the limbic areas of the brain and other areas. But here are the limbic areas that are changed. The hippocampus grows with mindfulness practices, and the amygdala becomes smaller with practice. That's a really big deal, because dysregulation can be the result of a big amygdala and a small hippocampus. Here's the point. By altering the connections between neural circuits in your brain, mindfulness practices improve your ability to self-regulate. In other words, certain mindfulness practices, like the Wheel of Awareness, can integrate your brain and therefore make you more emotionally stable. They increase your ability to self-regulate, to regulate your affect. Okay, that was all an attempt to persuade you of the value of the Wheel of Awareness practice. But what is it? Here's what it is. Imagine a drawing of a wheel. And for our purposes, this drawing has 3 parts. The hub of the wheel in the center, the rim of the wheel on the outside, and a spoke going from the hub to the rim. Now, the rim of the wheel represents all the knowns of life. This includes your 5 senses, the sensations in your body, your thoughts, your feelings, etc., all of the knowns. It also includes your sense of relational connectedness to other people. The rim of the wheel, in other words, represents all of the knowns of life. The center hub of the wheel represents something quite different. It represents the knowing of being consciously aware of the knowns on the rim. So the hub of the wheel represents knowing, and the rim represents all of the knowns of life. Now, imagine a spoke going out from the hub to the rim. The spoke represents attention. Attention. The spoke, that is your attention, can extend out from the hub and survey the various knowns on the rim. And there are 4 categories of knowns on this rim of the Wheel of Awareness. The first category is our five senses, the knowns of what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. The second category of knowns on the rim are what we sense from our inner bodily sensations, the interior of the body. The third category of knowns include all of our mental activities, such as feelings, thoughts, memories, hopes, longings. All of the mental sea inside of each of us is the third category. And the fourth category of knowns include our sense of relational connectedness with other people. By the way, if you are more of a visual learner, I will post Dan Siegel's drawing and explanation of the Wheel of Awareness on my website. Just go to episode 56 on the website and it will be there. Okay, how do you do the Wheel of Awareness practice? You can do this practice on your own or by listening to a guided recording. And again, if you go to my website on the page for this episode, episode 56, you can download a recording of me guiding you through the Wheel of Awareness practice. It's 17 minutes long. And here's how you do it. Begin by getting into a comfortable position and sensing the rhythm of your breathing. As you breathe in and out, visualize the wheel. The hub is at the center of the wheel. On the rim of the wheel are the knowns of life, everything you know and can be aware of. The rim of the wheel is divided into 4 sections, and we will survey each section of knowns in sequence. In other words, we will send out a spoke of attention from the hub of awareness to the rim as we focus our awareness on the various knowns of life. That's what this is all about, focusing our awareness on the various knowns out on the rim. In this way, you are differentiating the experience of knowing in the hub from the knowns on the rim. And this practice is very integrating for the brain. So you'll begin by turning your attention to the first quadrant of the rim, your 5 senses. One by one, take time to focus your awareness on what you hear, see, smell, taste, and then last, the sense of touch. Anywhere you can feel the pressure of the chair you're sitting on, or hand touching hand, or even the sense of your clothing touching your skin. That's the first quadrant of knowns on the rim of this wheel of awareness. Next, send a spoke of attention out from the hub of awareness and become aware of the inner sensations of your body. This is the second quadrant of knowns on the rim. Gradually become aware of the sensations you feel inside your physical body, from the muscles and bones of your head down to your shoulders, arms, legs, to feeling the sensations of the organs in your body. So internal bodily sensations is the second quadrant of knowns on the rim that we'll survey. Next, shift your attention to the third quadrant of knowns, which includes all of your mental activities. Mental activities simply refers to emotions, thoughts, memories, hopes, images, longings, all of the various mental activities in your mind. And we'll do 2 things as we focus attention on mental activities. First, just become aware of whatever enters your mind. You are inviting any mental activity to come into awareness. Any thought or feeling or memory, anything at all. Lots of things may come. Nothing may come. Nothing may come. It doesn't matter what comes. The important thing is to adopt a posture of openness to whatever thought, feeling, memory may come into awareness. It's a posture of bring it on. Bring it on. Let whatever comes, come. And just notice it. If a thought comes, Just notice the thought. If a feeling comes up, notice the feeling. Now, once you have taken some time to do that, the next step is to pay attention to the characteristics of how these mental activities enter and leave awareness. If a thought comes, just notice how that thought presents itself to awareness. Does it come suddenly, gradually? How does it come? And then, how does the thought stay in awareness? Is it constant? Does it fade in and out? Does it pulse? How does it stay there? And then last, how does the mental activity, the thought or feeling or whatever, leave awareness? Is it replaced by another mental activity, like a different feeling or a different thought? And if it's not replaced by another mental activity, what does the gap feel like between two mental activities? Sensing the gap is very important, and I'll explain why in a minute. But last, the fourth quadrant on the rim that we will survey represents our sense of connection to other people. Begin by focusing your awareness on your connectedness to the people in your family. Then open yourself to your sense of connection to friends, then people you work with, and finally to all the people in your community. Okay, those are the four categories of knowns on the rim of the wheel of awareness. Now, there is one more part to this exercise, and it's super important in terms of integrating the brain. Just a minute ago, when we were exploring the mental activities of the mind, I said that sensing the gap between two mental activities is very important. Here's why. When you sense the gap between two mental activities, you are getting connected to awareness of awareness itself. And this final part of the practice is about becoming aware of awareness itself. You may find this to be the most challenging part of the practice. Up until now, you have focused your attention on the knowns of life out on the rim. Now you are going to focus your attention on the hub of the wheel. In other words, you are going to become aware of the experience of being aware. And people have different images that they like to use to help with this part. Some find it helpful to imagine the spoke of attention going out toward the rim and then bending the spoke back and directing it back to the hub itself. Others find it more useful to imagine sending the spoke of attention out and then retracting it into the hub of awareness. Still others prefer to simply leave the spoke of attention inside the hub, or to have no spoke at all, and simply rest in the knowing of the hub of the wheel. Whatever works best for you is fine. The idea is the same, to notice what it's like to be aware. You are working on awareness of awareness and feeling what that is like. This will take some practice, so try to be patient with yourself. Okay, that's a summary of the Wheel of Awareness practice. And remember, I will post a downloadable recording of me guiding you through the Wheel of Awareness on my website. Now, as a reminder, why am I inviting you to begin practicing the Wheel of Awareness? Because brain health, brain stability, affect regulation, this is all a function of the degree to which the various regions of the brain are integrated with one another, connected to one another. And when you do the Wheel of Awareness practice, you are teaching your brain to differentiate the different streams of awareness from one another and then link them. In other words, the Wheel of Awareness practice integrates your brain. And again, if you want to understand all of this in more depth, please check out Siegel's book called Aware. there is a link on the books page of my website. For now, let me simply say this. Research has shown that mindfulness practices like the Wheel of Awareness cause structural changes in 3 very important regions of your brain. Practices like the Wheel of Awareness lead to increased growth in the prefrontal areas of the brain, which are largely responsible for regulating your affect. That's number 1. Increased growth in the corpus callosum, which links the left and right sides of the brain to each other. This integrates your left brain with your right brain, very healing. And third, increased growth in the hippocampus, which is a limbic structure that deeply affects implicit memory. Again, very healing. Now, how often do you need to do the Wheel of Awareness practice to reap these benefits? Every day. Look, it's 17 minutes. This is about self-care. The health of your brain is worth 17 minutes a day. As we end, just a reminder that I will post an audio recording of me guiding you through the wheel on my website. Go to the episode page of this episode, which is 56. There will be a link to an MP3 recording so that you can do the practice whenever you like. And I will also post a 3-page document of Dan Siegel's, which includes a drawing and an explanation of his Wheel of Awareness. Thank you so much for listening.